Back in the day when you were watching Airplane and Peter Graves turns around and says, Jimmy, do you like watching gladiator movies? Everybody laughed. This doesn't quite qualify as a gladiator movie because we're in the Carpathians and not in Rome. But if you like a lot of swordplay and stories of days of old, this one's going to be right up your alley. Cinematic class is about to begin. Your professor is in. Greetings, salutations, and other sundry affair. I am your cinematic professor and purveyor of truth in movies. Tonight's lesson plan is a fun little adventure called The Rising Hawk. And even though it's set back in yonder years, the parallels of this thing are almost ripped right out of today's headlines. You can't watch this thing and not make parallels to what's going on currently in our own society. What we have is we have a community that's very, very peaceful, okay? And suddenly, these communities are invaded, okay, by the barbaric hordes. Well, it's rough dealing with barbaric hordes. Just talk to anyone you might know in Portland, Seattle, Chicago, New York, Philadelphia, Baltimore, any of those cities. Just ask anyone there, they'll tell you. Not fun dealing with these people. So this group of villagers decides, well, you know what? We're leaving. And they go up to the suburbs. No, not the suburbs. They go up to the top of the mountain and they create their own little utopian society where everybody lives happily. And that lasts 4 years. But guess what, folks? Just like people in today's society, things like the seven deadly sins, greed, lust, anger, vengeance, all that kind of stuff, yeah, it's still part of human nature. So it's not too long before these poor folks are invaded by the Mongols. It's been a long time since we've had a Mongol invasion, so this one was a little bit refreshing. And while I was showing that graphic, I got some calls from Portland and Seattle and said, no, the Mongol hordes are still invading. So it's all a matter of perspective. And anyway, once the Mongols start coming down, then these people decide, you know what, we can't go back up to the top of the mountain again. We're at the top of the mountain. So they decide they're not going to be pushed out any further, and they're going to stand up and fight. And what you have is a group of villagers against the Mongolian army. And it turns out to be kind of an interesting thing. Starring in this is Robert Patrick. Robert Patrick does a pretty good job in this, but I got to admit there are times it seems like he's jaywalking through his role and not really quite into it. But for the most part, he holds the thing together. Tommy Flanagan is in this, Poppy Drayton, Alex McNichol, and Allison Doody are all in this, and they do a fine job. While I'm saying this, I should probably butcher this poor man's name, because the Mongol army is led by Burunda Khan. Khan! Okay, and he's played by Sigmund. So, this is going to be a good one. Sarenbold. I hope I did you justice there, brother, because he's pretty good as the Mongolian leader. He's, he's almost like Khan. He is so obsessed with this village led by Robert Patrick that he does some really boneheaded maneuvers, tactical maneuvers, just because these people must die. The Rising Hawk is notable because it is a collaboration between the Ukraine and America. And what makes it really better is that the Bidens weren't involved. So we can just sit back, relax, and enjoy the movie, not worry about how much Hunter's getting paid for it. The movie, all told, is good. It starts with a montage. Hey, Everybody gets a montage, right? Rocky had a montage. If you start the movie off with a montage, it's got to be epic, right? There's a lot going on in this movie. And that's why it takes over 2 hours to put this thing together. Now, when the young boys and the young actors are fighting, everything's kind of good. But when you get to the older guys like Khan and Robert Patrick and and the women, because you have to have a woman warrior, otherwise it won't fit the woman warrior agenda. All the Americans accept this, the Ukrainians are probably laughing around. But even when they fight, they do change your frame rate, where you can create. It's not quite a strobe effect because, my God, that would be annoying as hell. But by changing the frame rate, you can hide a lot of errors that your actors are making, and it covers up well the fact that these guys really don't know how to fight and may not know how to swing that sword. Hey, John Wynn is the fellow who has directed this rather epic swordplay adventure. He also was the editor, and it was written by Rich Ronat. These guys have done a pretty good job. I really enjoyed watching this movie. I mean, I'm having a little fun with it now, tying it into today's society, but it really was a lot of fun to watch. There's not going to be a whole lot of surprises for you here, but it does reflect life in a way because, when you have these giant epic battles, chances are there are going to be a number of benevolent characters that just don't make it to the end credits. I mean, you can't have two armies fighting and not be some severe casualties along the way, and I think you'll be surprised in this one who makes it to the end credits and who doesn't. And also, it does show, in this manner, I guess it's a little bit refreshing. It does show that even though we are centuries away from this time period, man still acts pretty much the same way. So we may have put down our swords and shields and picked up AR-15s instead, but the basic premise of everything is in there. I really enjoyed this movie, and I think that it's a nice collaboration between America and the Ukraine, and it will show. Just like Sun Tzu said millennia ago, if you want peace, you need to prepare for war. This movie is a perfect example of that. A good view. It's called The Rising Hawk. And how did you have heard? What the hell? Here ended your list.